Alright guys, we're getting a video here from Gameranx today. Please give him a sub. This is the evolution of the worst games from 1990 till 2025. We have done similar reactions to videos of this in the past, but it's always nice to see another perspective. So let's see what Gameranx has come up with and if we agree.
Now, according to Fallout, war never changes.
War never changes.
But video games themselves certainly do. Games have changed drastically since the early 90s.
I mean, so far, to be fair, all these games on the list look pretty freaking sweet.
They've changed in good ways and bad. We're focusing on the bad here today.
Okay,
because
here
we're
we
running
go.
down 35 years of some of the worst games ever.
No, yeah,
going back many
Retribution,
years
sure.
to the early 90s and looking at every individual year and one game from that year that was essentially perceived as one of the worst
game
games
every
by
year.
culture. So
Right.
let's get started off with 1990. Double Dragon 3, The Rosetta Stone. There's a reason arcades aren't on every street corner, man. Games like Double Dragon 3 here just kind of ruined the fun for everyone. Of course,
Yeah, I don't know why Technos went so wrong with this one. Like, Double Dragon 1 was great, 2 The Revenge was great, and this, like, it just seemed to run at a clunky frame rate. The gameplay was sluggish and not fun. The menus even had lag. The weapons weren't that interesting. I think the only thing that they got right was probably the music. The music in Double Dragon 3 was pretty sweet, but everything else was a no-go. And even the NES version was okay, but not without its problems. They came out, I think, with Combo Tribes afterwards. It was a little bit of an improvement and probably what they should have done. But yeah, this is terrible.
of
Terrible.
course, everybody knows this franchise. It's the game about little dudes walking right and punching bad dudes.
It's so stiff.
It's one of the early games in the beat-em-up genre, and Double Dragon 3 took out all the fun with one terrible
Pretty
feature.
much.
This game has one of the earliest versions of pay-to-win mechanics and microtransactions in the gaming industry. Now, arcade machines were made to eat your tokens.
Sure.
They're called coin munchers for a reason.
I mean, by the mid-90s, or early 90s, I should say, at this point, I mean, for 2 games, it'd cost $1 coin in Australia, so like a couple quarters to play at this point, right? That's already expensive enough, especially for an humble beat-em-up. But then you could keep inserting more credits and use that as in-game currency to go into stores and buy the weapons and things like that. I completely forgot about that. A totally, completely bullshit system there to exploit kids in a game that's not fun to begin with. Yeah, that's horrendous.
But the world rightfully just hated how Double Dragon 3 poisoned the well. Arcade games typically give you more lives the more quarters you dropped into the machine, but Double Dragon 3 goes even further. Going to in-game shops, instead of earning gold earned in-game, players had to add more quarters to buy extra guys, more power, or tricks.
Yeah, you know, there was some games like Captain America and Metamorphic Force that would beat 'em up. So the more credits you inserted, the more health you would get. That's kind of already fishy, but at least I would draw the line there. But this just took it to a place that you can't come back from.
It's one of the most diabolical arcade games for that alone.
Yeah.
And the rest of the game is just pretty bad, too. Nowhere near as good as the previous games. It has a weird, realistic art style that has none of the charm of the originals, and it was developed by a totally different team, making it just kind of feel
that's
flat out
obvious.
wrong. Next, 1991, arcades were still big business then, but we're not talking about the infamous arcade cabinet version of Dragon's Lair here. The arcade version is a series of animated adventures with a comically inept knight running through pretty binary choices, with one choice almost always leading to a ridiculous death.
Yeah, wow, I didn't realize this came out so late in the NES life cycle. I unfortunately did rent this and remember specifically when I rented this. It was a choice between playing this and watching Roseanne on TV. I ended up putting this down going to watch Roseanne. This was absolutely horrible. I think I made it 3 levels in when I was a kid. It was a weekly rental from the mum and pop video store. And I'd never played the original or knew anything about the charm of the original at this point. So I was just basically renting this on face value with the box cover. It was a great box cover. Unfortunately, the game was a 1 out of 10. Absolutely horrible. Horrible.
It was an arcade staple due to the absolutely beautiful animation provided by Don
does look
Bluth's
nice,
studio.
but everything
the
kills
Nintendo
you.
Entertainment System version has none of these positive points. Now, the NES still clung to life in 1991, even after the release of the Super Nintendo that same year.
Yeah, you see, I think the Super Nintendo came out late 1990 in the US, right? Australia was still a couple years behind in catching up to all that kind of stuff, so NES in 1991 in Australia, still the prevalent console, although the richies could probably afford Sega Genesis at that point. But yeah,
NES version of Dragon's Lair is just especially ugly, with giant chunky pixel art characters that sluggishly move across static screens. Every little object on the screen is a death trap. The first screen alone is a nightmare to navigate. A bat spawns, a dragon pops out of the bridge, and the floor falls right from under you. But you also move so slow, and the controls are so unresponsive. Trying to duck under a single bat is not easy. This is the worst type of video game. The only way to win was to unlock basically psychic powers and read the minds of the sick, twisted developers that made this slow, sluggish, technically inept game the way it was.
Yeah, look, go have a look on the internet, because I think if you use emulation, this has probably been ROM hacked now in order to make the game easier. I think I floated it past it. With that being said, I'm pretty sure I tried it and it didn't make that much of a difference. But just in case, if for some weird reason you're ready to revisit this, maybe look for a ROM hack perhaps.
We'll stick to the original arcade version.
Sure.
At least dying in that game was fun.
I got that on the Switch, it's fun.
Now, over at 1992, the NES continued to limp along despite Super Nintendo's release a year earlier.
If no one's ever played the NES before with these NES entries, everyone's going to be like, oh, it's shit, I'm not going to play the NES, all these crap games. The NES was a wonderful system, one of my most beloved consoles ever. Unfortunately, it did have some shovelware on it, okay?
Mentioned. One of the most infamously bad games of the generation dropped in 1992.
Yeah.
There was no way we weren't going to talk about Action 52. This compilation cartridge includes 52 original games from a developer called Farsight Technologies.
You know what? The first time I saw Action 52 was probably in 1992, 1993 on like either the Target or the Kmart shelf. I still vaguely remember it. Then looking at the back of the box, I was thinking, oh, 52 games, I need to get this. I only usually get one game at a time. And even my naive 11, 12-year-old self looking at the back of the box and having a look at all the games, even at that age, I knew they were shit. I didn't even want it, never asked for it. That was that.
You don't need to play 52 games here to see that something went very wrong during development. The last game on this list is the featured presentation, an aborted franchise starter called The Cheetah Men. It's a platformer that looks wrong in every way.
I think AVGN talked about Cheetah Men, didn't he? Didn't he say there was like a game-breaking glitch at the end where you couldn't even actually beat the game? And obviously this is pre-DLC, so you weren't able to fix it. A lot of problems in games up until recent history, actually, before pre-DLC. A lot of people don't remember that. Everyone's always like, oh, things used to be better before DLC. Not all the time, guys, not all the time.
Terrible sprite work and janky, busted controls. Most of the games are boring space shooters with black screens. You don't need to draw anything if you're in space. Now, to add insult to injury, though, the Action 52 cartridge cost $199.
Oh, Jesus, really? I didn't realize it cost that much money. So I usually was pretty in tune as a kid with how much games cost. For example, the mediocre Splatterhouse 2 that everyone wanted on Sega Genesis, for example, was $130 Australian at the Maya Centre. So around this time period, I was pretty in tune with how much games cost. But that's like $200 American at the time, at least $300 plus Australian. Jeez, bro.
1992.
You could get a Master System in game for that.
Now, but with Nintendo trying to push games up to $80 US, that's painful. But can we all agree that $200 for a pile of trash games is robbery here? This thing was inspired by Taiwanese counterfeit games, actually. The creator wanted to make a legal version of the same idea, except this game somehow feels like an even bigger scam. Action 52 is one of the worst games ever, but it did inspire something amazing. UFO 50 is this indie game with 50 genuinely great mini-games in a single collection.
I've got this game, UFO 50. I would say that UFO 50, honestly, in my humble opinion, is only for the most hard-out, hardcore 8-bit gamers, so to speak. The games on it are all fantastic, play well, but from my experience, notorious difficulty. But yeah, if you go on Steam or console or whatever, wherever it's available to get UFO 50, I know it's on Switch and Steam, I think, you could have a great range of games, and that's kind of like an Action 50 done right, whatever it's called. I'm not going to digress too much.
At least not too long ago. Just go play that instead. Next, at 1993, plumbers don't wear ties is the worst of a very bad trend in early 90s gaming. CD technology was getting better and better, and video game developers learned that they could slap footage onto a disc.
Oh man, big shout out once again to Gameranx. I love this video already. So they recently re-released Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. I think last year or the year before, and I played it as a joke. And unfortunately, there's no nuance on the internet anymore. I was like, "Hey, community, we're playing one of the worst games ever made. This freaking real life based VC, whatever you call it. Plumbers don't wear ties." And I kind of wanted to make a big event and a joke stream about it. And basically, everyone treated me like I was the Antichrist because I played it. It was just like, oh, it's just, nuance is dead. But yeah, this game is absolute trash. It's kind of like a dating, like point and click, choose your own adventure game. And yeah, I'll let Gameranx explain it further.
A video game didn't have to be a bunch of 16-bit pixels anymore. You could play a movie on a CD. Well, I mean, not quite. Not in 1993. Video footage still had to be ridiculously compressed to just fit onto an old CD-ROM. But that didn't stop people from trying to push FMV games this early. So FMV, if you don't know, stands for full motion video.
Yeah, FMV.
Yes,
sorry, that's what I was
there was a
looking for.
time when putting video in a game was mind-blowing. And a whole lot of big publishers and big money guys jumped at the chance to create games with movie footage. These games were universally bad, usually. And
yeah, I mean, it was sort of like a gimmick at the time because obviously we just had 8 and 16-bit experiences. So like having interactive games that looked like the real world, even though they were primitive, were like a big gimmick at the time back in the day, especially once Sega CD came out, and even to a point on PlayStation 1 and things like that. But yeah, that kind of died off, and again, people just wanted good games, not gimmicks after a while, sure.
the worst of them all was Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, a bizarre game that couldn't even get the full motion part of FMV right. Instead of watching little movies like in infamous games like Night Trap, here you listen to narration while watching still images.
So
You'll
lazy.
get a choice at key moments, and that's about it. The gameplay mostly follows a long, unfunny chase sequence with a topless woman and a man in his underwear. All the actors look like they were picked up from a porno shoot. The main plumber guy wears a tie, so like even the name is a lie. What a weird game, man. Next, in 1994, one of Nintendo's strangest decisions led to the creation of a counterfeit Legend of Zelda game that's somehow an official product. Zelda's Adventure is a weird top-down adventure game that's kind of like mixing Link to the Past with an FMV game. Instead of beautifully drawn forests and dungeons, the screens in Zelda's Adventure are like an ugly mishmash of photoshopped landscapes.
Is this from like the Philips CDI? Because I know we've all infamously heard of the Philips CDI Zelda games, especially from AVGN, and this kind of looks like that. I don't know if that's what he's talking about. It's around the time the Philips CDI came out, right?
Figuring out what to do is a big
You didn't
problem.
mention the system.
Everything here is wrong, really. The voice acting is not good. The weapons feel awful. Don't even get us started on dungeons.
Getting Lord of the Rings
there's
vibes
barely
from
any
this.
music. Instead of the triumphant Legend of Zelda theme, we get the soothing sounds of nature, so it's like a game to fall asleep to. And it exists because Nintendo really wanted a CD-based add-on for the SNES. Instead of producing the technology themselves, Nintendo courted two companies to partner with, Sony or Philips. They ended up skipping Sony, breaking their agreement, which caused Sony
okay.
to make their own CD-based console, the PS1, of course. We all know how that turns out. Philips never actually produced an SNES CD add-on due to the negative reception of similar Sega products. As part of breaking the deal, Nintendo licensed out the Mario and Legend of Zelda properties to Philips and allowed the company to produce games on the franchises for their own Philips CDI console.
I'm glad I'm sure Nintendo's really glad that most people have forgotten about these. And I have to admit, being in Australia, I didn't even know of their existence until the Angry Video Game Nerd. There are a lot of systems we didn't get, the Turbo Graphics, the Neo Geo. I don't think we got the Jaguar. I don't remember ever seeing a Philips in Australia, although it may have existed. Not so lucky in America. Kids don't forget these things, I guess.
There were 3 Legend of Zelda games on Philips CDI. The first 2 have internet-famous cartoon cutscenes, and those cutscenes are extremely
It's
funny.
a nice
but,
idea.
that gives the games some value. Zelda's
Lame, though.
Adventure here has no value. It's a terrible game on a terrible system that Nintendo just really wants you to forget. They want you to forget this whole mistake. Now, while we're talking about the Philips CDI, let's move on to 1995 and Rise of the Robots. Now, fighting games were huge in the mid-90s thanks to
yeah.
Street Fighter II, Mortal Kombat, These games weren't just fun video games, they were cultural touchstones. They were movies, cartoons, comic books centered around them, everywhere. Fighting games were officially a big deal.
And look, you had games like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, already Fatal Fury, King of Fighters at this point, Samurai Showdown, a lot of good games doing their thing. And, everyone wanted their slice of pie because that was just such a popular genre at the time. There's nothing wrong with doing a copycat game or a remake or what, just as long as it's at least equally as good as the other products on the market. But it's just amazing how much of a cheap cash cow people try to create on something or a fad that's currently popular without producing the quality. And yeah, Rise of the Robots here, I mean, I'll let Gameranx explain it further, but it's one of the worst examples of a busted fighting game. There was a lot of other ones I didn't like Art of Fighting, World Heroes. Some people like those games. I hated them. But this was the stinker of all stinkers. Even worse than Shaq Fu.
Mirage, the developers, knew how to make them even better with cutting-edge AI and CD technology. Yes, Rise of the Robots is one of the few games to release on the Philips CDI before the console was canceled, and it's easily one of the worst. Reviewers at the time called it the biggest disappointment of the year. It's a fighting game without any of the fundamentals we think of when we play a fighting game. The developers tried to push groundbreaking enemy AI to fight against, but in reality, infinite loops were so easy to pull off.
Yeah, you could have multiple moves, animations, flow. You're going to feel like you're able to do special moves, roundhouse kicks, punch combos, things like that. And it's just like a clunky punch, kick. Oh man, it's dreadful.
Players can kick opponents to death
Blackadder, I love it.
The screen. It's pathetic. It's a game that gets everything wrong about the genre. It was a cutting-edge piece of technology at the time, but that's it. Now
the sprites look okay, but even the backgrounds look lazy.
Hyped up to begin with. Now jumping to 1996, the 90s were like the golden age for weird mascot characters. Some great and iconic, and some pretty mediocre.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Bubsy. See Bubsy, the background for Bubsy there? I recognize it straight away. I was just about to say, they just came out with a Bubsy collection, I think on all platforms, at least on Steam anyway. The only passable Bubsy game was the first one. You got Bubsy 3D on PlayStation and all the other trash. They're really trying to go for the whole nostalgia's a hell of a drug territory because I don't know what universe anyone remembers this game being fun. They just remember the mascot.
Bubsy the Bobcat appeared in a couple of bad platformers that nobody really wanted to play. But those forgettable games look masterful compared to the nightmare that is the eventual Bubsy 3D from 96. This is a 3D platform
this is re-released
before developers could copy Mario 64. So instead of fluid, fun controls with a camera that kind of helps you see the action, you're trapped directly behind Bubsy and stuck with really clumsy tank controls, with the camera just sickeningly turning down every time, wherever you jump.
Let me know, guys. This is 1996. What do you think is worse, Bubsy 3D or Superman 64? Seriously, they're just both lazy, slapped together 3D games that look no better than a tech demo. Which one do you honestly think is worse? I think this gives Superman 64 a run for its money, hey. At least you don't have shitty time limits here.
Aren't the big problem here. It's the design in general. Everything in this game looks like nothing. I know it's technical limitations, but still, you're just this cartoon Bobcat in a low polygon dimension, you're on the grid in original 1982 Tron. It's a mess. His one-liners made for just really aggravating stuff. They made the game worse because he never shut up, and his one attempt at 3D really killed the series for good.
So, you wanna be a video game star? For starters, grab all the items you see.
It's horrible, man. I just haven't had anything to say the last minute. I just looked at this, I'm just rolling my eyes, eh?
But that's actually a lie. They're trying to revive Bubsy. Yes, believe it or not. Now, next up, the ugliest game of 1997, it's gotta be Redneck Rampage. Build engine games like Duke Nukem 3D, Blood, and Shadow Warrior were all the rage in the 90s,
I thought people liked Redneck Rampage. I first played that in 1997 on my friend's brand new computer. He had the game. I think I also have it on my Steam account. And it seemed fun enough just to go around shooting things. Probably a little bit dated, because obviously games like Doom and all that did it first in the end of 93. I don't remember it being too horrible, just outside the difficulty. I didn't always know where to go or what to do. But that was always common with these kind of games. It's just something that people just took the time to power through and learn how to play. You know, all these games are like Mazes, Labyrinth, things like that. I don't know if I would call Redneck Rampage the worst game of 97. Not that I can think of another one off the top of my head, but that's the first surprise to me.
Doom. The environments were starting to look like real places, and those games are still remembered for just fun, fast gameplay. We have an entire genre of indie games thanks to those 90s efforts. The boomer shooter genre keeps the legacy of
Shadow
building
Warrior
games alive, but nobody is making homages to this Redneck Rampage. This extremely late to the game ripoff digs deep into redneck culture in a way that really made nobody happy.
I mean, it's dated.
You'll explore barns. You'll explore rusty shacks. You'll shoot ugly guns and clones of badly rendered people. Everything about this game is just bad vibes.
Yeah.
It's got that terminal where do I go sickness. The keys are so tiny, we couldn't figure out where to go in the first level for a long time, and it only gets worse from there.
I'm gonna get you.
He brings up good points, okay? But when I think about all the tech demo shovelware 3D games that were like on PlayStation and Nintendo 64 at the time, I just can't personally see this being the worst game of the year. I certainly agree with him on the problems that the game has, though. Getting lost, trying to find items that aren't obviously there, so to speak. These are all true points, but okay.
I'm gonna get you.
We might have to revisit this one. Hey, shooting Porky Pig over there, alright. Well, you say you hate the game, you sure been playing it for a hot minute. You sure been playing this one longer than some of the other ones on the list. You sure you hate it? Maybe you're trying to convince yourself that you hate it, Gameranx.
To something like Quake 2, which was released the same year. Oh, holy crap.
Oh, yeah, look how good that looks in comparison. Yeah, okay, fair point.
Now we're getting to the good stuff, man. Jurassic Park Trespasser, this is a unique
I don't even know this game.
Bad games were getting a lot more ambitious in the late 90s. The developers were using technology to do things that we'd never seen before. Physics engines and advanced AI models could replicate reality in ways older games simply couldn't. The developers at DreamWorks Interactive really dreamed big here. Trespasser wouldn't be as bad as it was if the developers weren't so ambitious. This is a game with a physics engine 6 years.
Yeah, you know what this looks like? I don't know if you guys have ever played anything in the MetaQuest, but if you're using the MetaQuest and you're doing a 3D shooter game, it kind of looks like the rubber arms, like when you play a virtual reality game. So that's the one thing that I noticed straight away. I'm like, is this kind of like a VR game? But okay.
Or Half-Life 2 started experimenting with that stuff, and the computers at the time just couldn't handle it. And they didn't make a very good game around it either. In the game, you play as like a woman that crash lands on an island full of dinosaurs, and the dinosaurs are modeled to realistically move around the environments.
Hey, you know what? This looks pretty cool, but... And this is obviously a colossal plot, but like you can see how clunky this is moving around and straight away see how bad it is in execution. Okay, fair enough. But kudos to trying to be ambitious and do something a little bit more cutting edge. Like, I like the look of this, like the rendered dinosaurs in the background and stuff. I mean, considering this is still the late 90s, not many games looked like this at that point. Dude, I like how it looks. Not the Tartars, they're not realistic enough.
But the modeling work and bizarre walk cycles make it all look strange. They bob around weirdly as they move. And then we haven't even talked about the weirdest part of the game yet. So you're essentially a walking, talking arm in Trespasser. You interact with the physics-driven world with like a noodly arm that can pick up guns, but you have to physically control every action of your arm. So like when you pick something up, you can actually roll your wrist. You'll have to do this with every item because the game doesn't aim guns for you. No, you have to physically line up the sights with your eyes in just a really, really weird mechanic. One of the weirdest mechanics in video game history. Why did they make a game like this? Because they had a vision.
It looks so VR. Yeah, it's a shame because this game looks really, really, really good. They should have just kept basic first-person gameplay in this, and you would have been onto something, I think, especially with like a Jurassic Park license. Hey, but at least we got a video out of this. I find
Next in
this quite
1999,
amusing.
Superman 64. That's what everybody calls it.
All
It's
right.
technically called Superman: The New Adventures. If you've never seen it, you're in for an experience. This is an infamous disaster where you don't save cities from supervillains or really leap tall buildings in a single bound. No, it's just kind of about flying through rings and navigating these weird, muddy environments.
Yeah, and that wouldn't even be so bad in itself, I guess, if they gave you a fair time limit or multiple difficulties in order to, like, collect the rings in times. And then there's also other levels where you have to, like, pick up a car and things like that. And you're just given such a small amount of time that you can't even just get your composure and ease yourself into the game. It just does not hold your hand at all. And thankfully, in my case, I saw this on display at the Maya Center as a kid, and I was instantly like, nope. And then Nintendo Magazine, I think, also gave this like a 5 out of 100 as well. And yeah, I'm glad I had all those as a reference point, because stupid me probably would have looked at the box otherwise and given it a go. Thankfully, the Maya had it on display. They were shooting themselves in the foot. Obviously, the goal of a department store is to sell as many video games as they could. But they had Superman freaking 64 on display, telling parents, hey, you know what, this is garbage. The kids should be happy with the games that they got. There you go.
Instead of letting you do something fun, the first mission of this game was just like immediately hitting you in the face with how confusing and poorly made it is.
Yeah, but you just want to be Superman. You just want to use your laser sight, beat up bad guys, and be able to use a full range of your superpowers, you know, leaping tall buildings, being fast at a locomotive, and Man of Steel, and all that crap, right?
You like at this point, you flying very slowly around
like
a
Flight
foggy
Simulator.
metropolis, flying through rings on a time limit. You also have to complete mini objectives like stopping a crime between rings, but these are somehow even more incomprehensibly fast.
Yeah, see, look at this. This is what I mean. That car thing, you get like a couple... Maybe it's a different...
You can fail a
Lex
quest
weird.
without
What do you
even knowing
do?
why or how, and the game doesn't help you understand the controls either. Like, you're given seconds to figure out
Yeah,
how
exactly.
you can
No
lift
time
cars
to ease
and
your
throw
way
them.
in.
Nothing here is intuitive. Flying is a mess. It's hard to see. Everything looks bad. It really was a total failure on every level. It was a big seller in 1999 somehow, even if the game was mostly unplayable. I think it was just the power of Superman, the animated series, the comic books at the time. Really, that animated series, it was so good, and it deserved a lot better.
Yeah, I saw one YouTuber play this a few years ago, and I saw him sit through and play the whole thing, and I think he needed to have like a week's worth of therapy sessions afterwards.
Yes.
This is the game that's going to make people lie on the couch for $150 an hour. Yeah, bogus, man. So at least we're up to the year 2000 now, or so I hope.
Next, it's the year 2000 with Daikatana. This is the legendary first-person shooter disaster designed by John Romero, one of the developers of the original Doom. Back in the day, making
that
maps for
bad.
Doom was enough to make you like a rock star. Now, Romero left id Software to create his own video game company called Island Storm, and then poured, like a lifetime into designing one of the worst FPSs of all time, man. Daikatana is a shooter set in the cyberpunk future, but it's also a fantasy game where your hero travels through time, visiting different time periods with their own unique arsenals and enemies.
So do you think the people that made Time Splitters copied this idea? Because you obviously on GameCube and PlayStation, Xbox, you had the Time Splitters game. So you think they basically took inspiration from this? What do you guys think? One thing I've noticed about this now, I've not played the game. It looks okay. Probably there are other games at the time that looked better. But what I like in FPS games like this is for the weapons to feel like they pack a punch, and they just don't feel very impactful. That's one thing I've
Each
noticed
time
already.
period has a full selection of guns, and the weapons never overlap.
They just don't feel very impactful. You're playing something like Unreal Tournament or Quake Arena at the time, and those guns just absolutely freaking slap.
And to be honest, like, it's a creative and ambitious idea. It's too bad most of these weapons are just extremely bad and unfun.
Yeah.
Many of the starting weapons actually will harm you, like a launcher with an extreme amount of splash damage, or a shotgun that fires its entire magazine with one trigger pull.
Geez, that gun's taking a while to charge up. You're just going to get overrun by enemies in that time period.
But the guns aren't the worst part of the game. The worst part is the AI companions. These things are so dumb, they'll get stuck on level geometry like every few minutes.
Oh, dude, yeah, I mean, this looks exceptionally bad, but this was a problem with shooters and team-based shooters at the time. And even a really, really good game like Unreal Tournament Game of the Year Edition, I mean, you had to carry all the heavy lifting by yourself as well.
Can't exit a level without your AI companion, so you'll have to babysit them. It is an absolute mess.
Yeah, I can see they're all glitching all over the place. Just looked like it needed some more quality control testing. Probably maybe
now
another
jumping
couple
to the
years.
year 2001, this is a difficult one because it's one I actually have a lot of nostalgia and fondness for. It's Extermination. This is where we're getting to the weird stuff. This isn't strictly the worst game. I mean, this is the era.
I mean, I'm on first impressions and vibes here, I'm kind of getting the siphon filter sort of look to this.
Of licensed game garbage and shovelware.
Sort of getting siphon filter vibes.
So an original game concept can't possibly be the worst, but it's an interesting evolution and one of the earliest games from designer Swery. Somehow, this rough game was published by Sony and is actually technically one of the first survival horror games on the PS2.
Right.
Silent Hill 2, this is definitely not. Extermination is about a team of special ops soldiers sent to an Arctic research base to fight an evil infection of alien creatures. It's basically The Thing, except replacing tension with goofy, laughable dialogue and some really, really rough.
Not liking the look of the gameplay. Doesn't look very tight. But I mean, to be fair, at this time, I mean, it probably was relevant at the time. It's a bit dated now. Kind of has that like Resident Evil.
The gameplay is passable enough in the early stages of the game, but it becomes painful by the end. There are a lot of mediocre reviews from major publications for this game, and we're going to guess that none of them got to the end because the final section in the game, it required absolute precision, almost to like a broken point. It was maddening. Final bosses like this are why video games ditched boss battles for so long in the mid-2000s, because Extermination towards the end was really rough.
I think developers need to remember that a lot of people like to play games because they want to relax and forget the world. The world can be a really shitty place sometimes. It can be a wonderful place, but also a really shitty place sometimes. So just being able to kick back and relax and forget life is a very important thing for most people, right? And so if you want to make your game challenging for the hardcore players, fair enough. But have multiple difficulty levels, right? Let the casuals do their thing, and let the hardcore, I play games 18 hours in my basement people do their thing as well, and everybody can be happy.
Still, it's got some cool moments. I'd say definitely watch a YouTube video about it if you've never played it. But anyway, let's move on.
I mean, I like the idea of this, but it looks like a PlayStation 1 game, and this was supposedly on PlayStation 2, so
Next,
it does look
the year
dated
2002.
graphically.
Legion, The Legend of Excalibur. This is a title even the most die-hard fans of bad games probably haven't heard of. Look, it's not a notable bomb like Daikatana, and it didn't have involvement from someone in the future that ended up making good games like Swery. Legion, The Legend of Excalibur is a rare find. For a brief time, when RTS games were still riding high with like the blockbuster success of things like StarCraft, developers tried to make real-time strategy work on consoles. Legion is one of those games, and it is a poorly made, shoddy, busted attempt at a strategy game.
Look, you know, the graphics like this would be acceptable on like PS1, Nintendo 64. I'm just talking graphics aside. I'm not talking about the gameplay. I don't know what the gameplay is like in this, but we're going towards the next generation of like PC, PS2, Xbox original at this point. Yeah, graphically, I mean, even that doesn't look like it cuts the mustard anymore.
On the biggest console of the time. It just did not work out great. This is a top-down action RPG where you control a small
I kind of want to like
heroes.
it, but it's
You'll
just,
run across these like ugly, muddy maps
some
to complete
strategy
objectives like, you know, protecting a village or raiding an enemy castle, all with a young King Arthur. Your characters level up as you progress, but there's a big problem with the gameplay. So if you don't level up enough, later challenges just
too much
become
of a grind.
impossible. Warcraft 3
Looks
came
lifeless
out
too.
the same year. That really puts things into perspective.
Oh,
here.
yeah. I mean, that was a pretty big standard bearer. I mean, after Warcraft 2, I had pretty big shoes to fill to bring out another one, and they absolutely nailed it. Although I think they released a remake or a remaster that everyone hated. Let me know in the chat. I kind of remember there being like a Warcraft 3 controversy, but I can't remember what it is. But I think the original one was very well received, for sure.
Legion wanted to be Warcraft 3 early, and it just failed miserably. Next, over at 2003, Drake of the 99 Dragons.
The fuck
this
is
a pillar
this?
of bad gaming. It's one of the most iconic, awful games of the generation, and for very good reason. It's just awful to play.
Was this the one on Xbox?
Looking at pre-release images of this game, it doesn't look too bad. I was pretty excited for it at the time, seeing it in magazines. The characters were drawn by the artist Bruce Timm, the guy behind Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah, it does look like that, and I was honestly going to say graphically, I actually don't mind the look of it, to be honest. But what matters is how it plays, obviously. I honestly don't mind how it looks.
Look. It almost looks like a real game if you only check out the cover. The badness really sets in after starting a new game, firing it up. What could have been a cartoon-inspired take on Max Payne shares much more in common with Superman 64.
Yeah, it doesn't look
so you're
too
always
fun
on
to
a
play.
time limit in the game, and you're in these maze-like levels where it's never really clear what to do or where to go, and these aren't traditional levels. They're like arcade challenges where you need to collect random objects or defeat enemies. There's no real design feel to it. There's a big empty area to run around in before time runs out. The design is just bad. It shouldn't be a surprise that controlling
looks so
Drake
clunky,
just feels
doesn't it?
just as shoddy with janky controls and awful movement. Look, nothing about this game really works.
Yeah, look, it definitely looks like the person who made the levels for this didn't understand the basic concept of fun level design. Definitely noticed that
It was an
straight
instant
away.
flop with critics and audiences at the time. Next, we're in 2004. Now, we've talked about it already. You know, new technology can lead to the creation of innovative game mechanics, and everybody tries. Despite everything we're going to say about the video game Lifeline here, it's definitely an innovative one. Sony didn't just publish Lifeline, the company also developed it. It's a game that takes advantage of voice recognition software. Yes.
Why am I kind of getting the Parasite Eve vibes from this? Not that I played that game much, obviously, because I was more into sort of like the Resident Evil style of thing. But I'm looking at this, and I'm like, hey, this looks like something I could dive into. It kind of looks like a survival horror. I don't know. Does this have RPG elements? I don't know. Just visually, it kind of looks like something I'd be interested in, to be honest.
Instead of taking direct control of a character, you order them over a microphone. Like
Oh,
you
that
command
sucks.
them.
Okay,
it's
yeah,
a genius
deal breaker.
idea for a game, but the big problem is that it just
Too much of
doesn't
a
work.
gimmick.
In Lifeline, you play as a character in a control room, telling a hapless member of a space station how to escape.
Yeah, you know what? That's a thing in video games, right? Like, that's a very, very niche market. Because most people want to be, like, blowing the fuck out of monsters and bad guys. Not telling their friend, hey, blow up the monsters and the bad guys. That would be like someone in the living room, you're both on the couch with your friend, and your friend is playing the game, and you're telling your friend, shoot him, jump there, grab that. It's no different, right? I can understand why this wouldn't be appealing.
You have to give her specific instructions. Now, she has no internal life whatsoever. Like, you have to command her to turn,
too niche.
walk forward, shoot enemies that appear. It's a great idea designed in the most absurd way possible. This is a survival horror game where you watch a woman ignore your orders while she just does nothing to even preserve her own life. It can be really frustrating. This was another one I was so excited for with the tech. Maybe that technology worked better in Japan where this initially was, but the North American version really struggled to understand even the most basic commands.
Too much too
It was
soon.
a fascinating experiment of the time, but that's all we look back at it as anyway.
You think about it now, we're starting to get AI-based games. I forgot what the name is. But there's this AI game where this chick crash lands onto a planet and you have to guide her through voice on how to get off that planet. And it's becoming a lot more accurate and fun now. But keep in mind, this is already over 20 years later after this game came out. And so, yeah, it was just too much too soon, I guess.
Next at 2005, Marvel Nemesis, Rise of the Imperfects. Look, it isn't the worst Marvel video game on our list. Somehow there's a much worse one later, but it is the highest profile flop of 2005. This was a complete boondoggle that actually wasted EA's then partnership with Marvel by creating a kind of fighting game brawler nobody really wanted. The
Yeah.
announcement in 2004 confused some audiences with an
Kinda like,
extremely
what, Power Stone
unwieldy
sort of
name
vibes?
that just smacked of branding. This isn't a game about Spider-Man having fun with the Fantastic Four. This really just felt like an exercise in corporate synergy. EA invented a new string of boring characters here called the Imperfects, and bad game history was born here. Look, you have things like Marvel vs. Capcom pitting superheroes versus video game characters, and that stood the test of time.
Yeah, but I guess they had to make this game so games like Marvel Ultimate Alliance could run. You know, this walked so it could run. Marvel Ultimate Alliance games were a lot better, and they were more or less glorified sort of like isometric 2.5D beat-em-ups with RPG elements. Pretty fun games to play. Still not perfect, but obviously a lot better than this.
Marvel Nemesis just invented a gang of jabronis for Wolverine and Venom to beat up. These characters were just really
This looks a little
unremarkable.
bland.
The ugly brown-green
Nothing
smears.
particularly
And
wrong, but
audiences
nothing
at the time
particularly
were just
right
sick of
either.
all these generic style-looking characters. Instead of bright, colorful characters from the Marvel Universe, from the pages of comic books, we got the saturation turned way, way down. Marvel tried to hype up the game with a 6-issue comic series about the Imperfects, and surprising no one, that didn't sell. That was just an even bigger mark. It was another miss and something that just served as a huge black eye on the reputation of EA and Marvel. The partnership between these two guys did not last.
Yeah, hey, look, you know what? If I never ever get to try this game in my lifetime, I'm fine with that. There's like dozens upon dozens of different Marvel games and properties, if not over 100. I don't know why anyone would go back to this one. When you're playing with a licensed property that's as popular as Marvel, you really have like an even higher standard, I think, expected of you. And yeah, this is just way under-delivered, is what it is.
Now, next up, Sonic the Hedgehog rules the year 2006. It's
Oh,
Sonic
yeah,
06,
Sonic
man. Our hands are
06,
tied.
sure.
The game is so synonymous with the year it was released. It's most often called Sonic 06 by fans, like I said, and it's probably to distinguish it from the good games in the series. Sonic 06 is just a weird mess. The gameplay is rough, the story is bad, the graphics are bad, the title is generic, like, even the loading times are bad. The loading times are actually legendary in this game, with weird pauses between conversations in the open world town area leading to a loading screen. We get loading screens for like text boxes. And in a game that was so unstable, any loading screen could actually cause a crash. And then the gameplay. The game is one of those ones where it's simultaneously too fast and too slow for its own good. The physics are insane. There's buggy parts to it, like Sonic will just drop through the floor of levels unpredictably. You'll take damage even when you're attacking it. Like, this is just a broken game on a lot of levels.
I just thought this was a time period in general where Sonic games were kind of like mediocre and we were getting to the point where we were getting too much of a good thing. I think you had that Sonic All-Stars, which was alright. And then one of the Sonic Adventure games was fantastic, although I would argue today it doesn't hold up well, could use the remake remaster treatment. But yeah, for me at this time period, it just seemed like all the Sonic experiences, just too much of a good thing. I was just getting very over it.
And it took a while for Sonic to kind of come back from this mess. Look, we can make an entire hour-long video about Sonic 06. I still think there's some funny things to talk about it, some charming elements, but it really is something. You gotta see it to believe. Sonic, thankfully, is in a much better position these days. But
Yeah,
2006 was pretty rough for him. Next, at 2007, the hits keep on coming because the next thing here is Vampire Rain. And this game gets something wrong. We haven't talked about new...
I don't know how the host Gameranx here has played so many shitty games. Like, how did you do the research for this video? Was your boss like, okay, we just went on Metacritic and we found like 1,000 really shitty fucking games. Now, we want you guys, you journalists, to go through all these shitty games and come up with, like, the worst one for each year. Because you couldn't pay me enough to do a job like this. I mean, kudos to you for the video, man.
Nearly as much. The 2000s were the rise of the stealth game. You know, the PS2 and Xbox era introduced video games where sneaking was your main priority, right? Games like Splinter Cell and Tenchu made stealth fun. Metal Gear Solid was the king.
I hate stealth, bro.
And
I
stealth
hate it.
only became
Leroy
like
Jenkins
a stronger
everything.
gameplay gimmick with Assassin's Creed as that series went on. Now, Vampire Rain attempted something like a paranormal Splinter Cell, and it failed horribly. This is like the worst case
Kinda
scenario
looks
for
like
stealth
Metal
games. This is a
Gear.
game where enemies will just kind of catch you with no
Looks like
warning,
Metal Gear.
no rules, in which none of the stealth lessons developers learn in games like Metal Gear Solid 2 or anything were even applied. You're dropped into giant, featureless city areas, and you just basically start sneaking. And one wrong move means death. So from the first minute of this game, you're kind of just confused and probably dead. Not to mention the laughably goofy story elements and things they got going on here. It runs badly, it looks stupid, your guns are worthless, and it's just the perfect blend of bad game soup.
You know, honestly, it doesn't look that bad. Like, the graphics aren't so great, but I mean, it looks like something that would be sort of semi-fun to play. But one thing I noticed straight away, it seems to be very easy to get overwhelmed by enemies in this. So I think what would throw me off on this one personally is probably the difficulty. Doesn't feel
Next
casual
up,
enough.
2008, flashback to Alone in the Dark, the franchise
this one
that just
really
keeps
that
coming
bad?
back.
I think I have
the
this in my
first game in
collection
the
somewhere.
series
Hang on, let me have a look.
defined the survival horror
Look at
gameplay
my
aesthetic
shelf.
like way back in 1992, but nobody has ever really had any idea what
try
to
this one.
do with Alone in the Dark as a franchise since then. So, case in point, this
Yeah, because everyone remembers the one from the early 90s, right? That kind of started off the whole survival horror thing. Well, technically there were games beforehand. But that was like sort of like the first 3D polygon one, if I'm not mistaken. And then you got Resident Evil, Clock Tower, Silent Hill, things like that later on. But then there was like a whole range of them afterwards across multiple consoles. And to be honest, I never played any of the other ones like at all.
reboot of the game by developer Eden Games. This was an ambitious reimagining of the property. It wouldn't be like a slow plotting
that's
survival
okay.
horror adventure. No, it would be like a prestige TV series
Oh,
in the
yeah,
form of a
the
video
combat
game with
shit.
action, adventure. Literally, every chapter begins and ends like a TV show with recaps, and players were free to skip ahead. Like, it's a good thing too, because Alone in the Dark is such a buggy mess that certain levels can't be beaten. On our copy on Xbox 360, during the big car chase sequence, the world doesn't load in
Oh, that
fast
looks
enough, so our car goes
horrible.
careening.
Yeah, okay. So honestly, I think the game for 2008 looks pretty neat. Like, if you're just going on the graphical appearance, like, hey man, this game looks pretty sweet. But automatically, the combat already, the combat looks clunky, and then the driving physics, it just looks like so much oversteer. And, I mean, hey, gameplay is the foundation of everything. Gameplay trumps over graphics as far as I'm concerned. No one's going to agree with me. Not everyone's going to agree with me. But,
Off the edge of the world.
perfect
Yes,
example.
This is one of those games.
Good
What makes
graphics, shit
Alone in the Dark
gameplay.
special is ambition. It's like a partially open adventure where you can explore some monster-infested areas in Central Park in New York City. The main mechanic here is related to fire and burning things. So you can set things on fire
looks
and then
nice.
transfer that fire strategically to defeat monsters or solve puzzles. It spreads and you manage that. It's kind of impressive to see a door or an entire room burn, while the physics really handle how the objects crumble and fall apart. But it also barely works.
Yeah.
Maybe you're starting to see the trend of overly ambitious games released to the public, even if they don't really work, and this is a great example. It's like one of the buggiest big budget games, and definitely the worst one of 2008.
That looks like a
Later
what-if
revisions
story, eh?
couldn't really save
That's a
this
shame.
franchise either. I mean, this is a game where you combine gasoline with bullets to shoot fire bullets. It's just stupid. Next up, moving on to
All right.
2009, the military video game industrial complex was in full swing by this point. 2009 was the year of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. This was 2 years after Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare really popularized military shooters on console like we're set in present day. So really, the stage was set for more of these types of games. And in
Okay.
swoops Rogue Warrior, this incompetent wannabe that somehow starred Hollywood talent. So the main character, Dick Marcinko, is voiced by a very odd performance of Mickey Rourke. It's based on Dick Marcinko's book. It was apparently based on real-world events in the Cold War. This game wants to be a mature game for big boys, so every other line is laced with absurd profanity. It's actually kind of low-key brilliant. I love it. Like, just look up a YouTube clip of all the dumb voice lines in this movie, all the one-liners. But it just feels like a parody of a military game.
Yeah, but that's okay sometimes. Like, straight away, what I was about to say before you mentioned it, this kind of looks like a guilty pleasure game. And look, I mean, I don't know if they were like trying to make a full hardcore serious game here, or if they were trying to make something that was kind of like a parody of itself and not take themselves too seriously. I don't know what the goal was with this game, but just going by the early footage here that we've seen so far, it kind of looks like a guilty pleasure. Never going to be like a 10 out of 10 game, but something to pick up for a few laughs if you have nothing else to play. I'm not offended by anything that I see here.
People wanted, and a lot of us did. Like, it's funny. Today, it's just a creaky reminder of how bleak video games used to be. It's a really bad campaign. It's like probably the worst Call of Duty campaign you've ever played. It's like 2 hours of gameplay. It's rough.
2 hours for a full price game, not much.
But at the end of the day, you do get to hear Mickey Rourke say some truly insane things. So I'm always going to give it points for that. All right, new decade with 2010.
Okay.
Now, licensed properties at this point were kind of dying off, and Iron Man 2 might be a big part to blame. The Marvel Cinematic Universe was moving ahead, and video game developers couldn't really keep up with demands. Big, embarrassing bombs based on Marvel movies and even DC movies might have destroyed licensed cash grabs on big consoles.
Yeah, I remember, just one thing I want to mention, I remember as PS3 was dying off, like the EB Games here in Australia would always be selling off their PlayStation 3 games cheaply, and I remember as they were putting all the PS3 games on sale to clear them, you'd always see like Iron Man 2, the Spider-Man games on PS3, all on clearance, right? And I did pick up a couple of them, including Iron Man 2. I've never played it, but it's in my collection waiting for a rainy day. Now I probably won't. But it certainly seemed like that there was like a Marvel game coming out in this time period every 2 seconds. And I never really heard my friends talk about any of them be any good. I never saw any of them hit the greatest hits range or anything. I just kind of had something in my brain telling me, oh yeah, it's probably again too much of a good thing, best to avoid it. And just going by the review of Iron Man here, for example, turns out I was probably right.
This genre of games onto like mobile and handheld consoles for a while. Games were getting too hard to make and taking too long to produce. They couldn't churn them out for these movies. Case in point, the Iron Man 2 game. Iron Man 2 was a game where you flew around big levels, demolishing enemies with an arsenal of weapons.
That does look terrible.
It seems simple, right? It sounds awesome, but unfortunately it's not. It's ridiculously short, extremely ugly, and really repetitive. That's what killed it.
That's the thing. So hypothetically, let's just say this game is 3 hours long, right? Because you're using a licensed property, it's already a $30, $40 price tag on the game by default because of the property. And then, that's the problem with a lot of these licensed properties. You're having them even today with things like Steam and all that. Like, I'll just use this as an example. There was a Karate Kid beat 'em up that just recently came out over the last year. And it costs like $54 Australian. And you know that most of that money was going towards the license, because when you actually play the game and what it has to offer, it felt like the game itself was worth $1.50, if that makes sense. Like, just like some crappy $2 mobile release. And that, I would assume, would be an issue, not just now, but back then in regards to licensed properties. All the money that you invest in the game go towards acquiring the license, I would assume.
Nothing here but deserts filled with trucks to destroy, using the same couple of weapons. Now, Sega would soon give up attempting to publish video games based on movie licenses. The Xbox 360 era kind of ended the idea of every big budget movie getting a video game, which is so funny because these movies at the time were absolutely crushing it, but the game department just couldn't keep up. For every surprisingly decent Captain America game, or hell, even the Batman Begins game, there's things like the Thor game, or even worse, this Iron Man 2. Next is 2011 with Mind Jack. This is one of those bad games we can't stop thinking about. This is undeniably a trend chaser at the time. Like, we're going to be seeing a lot of this throughout the 2010s, but Japanese game developers tried to connect with Western video game markets in interesting ways. Mind Jack is an early attempt at that, combining third-person cover shooting in the styles of like Gears of War with one very weird gimmick. In this game, you can actually mind jack enemies, civilians, or even robots, to solve puzzles and defeat enemies. Despite the story being...
So I'm kind of getting sort of like the Watch Dogs vibes. I mean, I know you could control electronics. It's been a long time. I can't remember if you can control people as well. But I just feeling getting the Watch Dogs sort of, okay.
Developed by outside talent in the UK, The script is baffling. It's got grammatical errors, it's got indecipherable background dialogue. It's just a mess. And it's a wild experience that's almost worth tracking down if you're really, really into playing dumb old games. Mindjack has this fun mechanic that was actually later kind of used in Driver San Francisco to great effect. Now, in Mindjack, it's simply a way to quickly move around the battlefield. It's also strangely cruel, like you're mindjacking a civilian and then getting them gunned down in the street. It just feels...
I'm not gonna lie, that's some dark humor. It's like, Operation Human Shield in full effect. Hey, Jamie, come over here. Like, 22-year-old little Jamie. There you go, big batsman gap here. Hey, boys, how you going? Okay, there you go. All right, I've used you, moving on. Then you got 3-year-old little Billy. Hey, mum and dad, want to play? All of a sudden, you take 3-year-old little Billy on the battlefield. And okay, no, we're getting too dark here now. But, no, that sounds like fun. It sounds like some dark humor. I'd get on board with that. Gameplay does look pretty hard, though.
In a game where you're meant to, like, connect with the characters. Are these people psychopaths? I don't know. Maybe we're the crazy ones for playing this game from start to finish. Now, 2012 with Silent Hill Downpour. In a lot of ways, Downpour killed the Silent Hill franchise for like 16 years. Downpour is a straight-up classic attempt at survival horror that isn't even remotely scary. You run from a big red light in awful chase sequences or fight enemies with bad controls that don't even feel like Silent Hill enemies. All with a stuttery frame.
The standard on this looks like PS2 graphics or very early PS3, so it doesn't look current gen. It looks floaty, a little bit unresponsive. Already straight away I can see this game does not look good.
Rate. And fighting the enemies feels bad in this game. Shooting guns feels even worse. The story is kind of an attempt at recreating the heartbreaking magic of Silent Hill 2, but is so ham-fisted it botches its own message about forgiveness and revenge. The enemies look like corn rejects, and the spooky levels kind of just feel like fun houses.
Keep in mind, a year later we got games like Grand Theft Auto 5 and Last of Us. It looked miles above this. So, yeah, this definitely does not look current generation at all.
And worst of all, Downpour includes characters from the, at the time, still ongoing Silent Hill comics, like The Postman. It's a baffling choice to tie in anything from some of the worst comics that we've seen, but that's the grave the developers chose to dig for themselves. And after everything we even said, I wouldn't even say Downpour is the worst game in the series, which still says a lot. Look, Silent Hill fans are all over the place. This game did find an audience, but in 2012, it was considered one of the biggest disappointments.
Sure.
Now jumping over to 2013, of course, Ride to Hell Retribution.
Yeah, we've mentioned this before in a previous video. It looks like everything that should be good in a video game, right? Open world, biker Sons of Anarchy kind of storyline, you know, something gritty, crime drama, that kind of thing. I don't know how you screw up with something that should be able to write and develop itself. But okay, let's have a look.
When you try to copy Grand Theft Auto, but don't have like the talent, the budget, the foresight, I don't know, to actually do it.
There you go.
There's a story behind the development of the game where the scope drastically changed during development, shrinking what was once an anticipated open world adventure into this very boring third-person shooter. This is a game with about 3 music tracks, but it feels like it's got 1. You'll be listening to it for like 20 hours, just riding motorcycles and popping bad guys in the head with weird kind of motion captured combat. The motorcycle driving sequences are limited to on-rails shooting with no player agency.
You should have just done that element and turned it into another Road Rash game. People have been asking for Road Rash games, a new Road Rash game for decades, and like, yeah, we did get Road Redemption, but that kind of floated under most people's radars. Should have just taken this and done like a Road Rash Jailbreak 2 or something.
You'll mostly be exploring these small maps, shooting ugly bad guys, and then infamously just sleeping with women seconds after rescuing them during random encounters. It's a total joke, man. This game feels like it aimed for the moon and hit the bad game stars. Now, next up, 2014, Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z. You know, we talked about Mindjack, Silent Hill Downpour with Japanese developers trying to get to that Western audience, that Western game market.
Yeah, I just don't like this kind of like anime art style. One of the Ninja Turtles games looked like this. And, you know, the Jet Set games. I mean, that was somewhat fun to play, but I just wasn't into this kind of art style. I don't know, it just didn't do anything for me. So straight away, I already don't like the game. I might be being a little unfair. Let's see.
extraordinarily terrible as this. It is hard to describe what Yaiba even is. It's kind of like a grindhouse reimagining of Ninja Gaiden, a series that didn't need to be reimagined. Recreated by arguably one of the worst developers, Spark Unlimited became a go-to bad game studio for Japanese publishers to dump their once well-regarded franchise. So in 2013, Capcom gave them Lost Planet 3. In 2014, Koei Tecmo gave them Ninja Gaiden Z. Look, sometimes we don't like picking on developers, but these games are garbage, man. Yaiba is flat out one of the worst action games we've played. Full stop.
I mean, it just looks like your run-of-the-mill, generic God of War clone-style gameplay. I mean, I've seen a bunch of these across PS2, PS3. I don't like it, but I've not seen anything that's ultimately offensive about this. Maybe I'm missing something. You tell me.
The developer Spark Unlimited must have been like one of the greatest hucksters in the universe to convince real companies like Capcom that they should be invested in. Yikes. Now over to 2015, Alone in the Dark. This franchise just
another Alone in the Dark game?
In 2008, that reboot blew our minds with just how bad it was, but single-player horror games were still popular at the time. In 2015, there's a new trend: multiplayer cooperative shooters, and so many games tried to breach the market that Left 4 Dead created way back in 2008, I believe. So there were plenty of latecomers, but this one, Alone in the Dark Illumination, this added even more weird elements to the mix. The levels were partially randomized, and each character had different abilities. It was meant to be a cooperative, replayable experience. Except,
you know, a lot of people still love Left 4 Dead 2, I think it is. There's so many games that have come out over the years, you know, World War Z, Killing Floor, Back for Blood, and a few other ones, and it's just, I don't know if those games are not as good as Left 4 Dead 2, or if people are just missing the point in time that they played Left 4 Dead 2. Because I think a lot of the times, not always, but in some cases, it's not the games itself that are so memorable, but that time period and the memories you had from playing the game, if it makes sense. Like, I've played Left 4 Dead 2, didn't play the game when it came out, right? And then I play it now, and I'm kind of like, yeah, this is alright, pretty fun. But I prefer to play World War Z myself. So, I mean, you tell me, do you think Left 4 Dead 2 is as good as what people say? Because that certainly seemed to be the flag bearer for the team-based stuff.
Nobody wanted to play it. We can only assume the rights to Alone in the Dark come cheap because companies kept trying to revive it in ways that just made absolutely no sense. Next, the year 2016, things that made no sense. If we're just going to keep talking about...
this is probably one of the worst Resident Evil spin-off releases outside of Residiverse, which I was really looking forward to because I was thinking finally we're going to get a Resident Evil Online experience, which ended up being just as trash as this. And I think they turned the servers off in under a year for that. It was terrible. But Umbrella Corps, I mean, I have this on my PlayStation. It's been years since I've loaded it up. It was supposed to be sort of like a semi-military spin-off online game of Resident Evil. And, I mean, it's just complete trash. I mean, we'll show the footage here.
It's Resident Evil.
It's horrible.
Point with
I just
Umbrella
cringed
Corps
instantly.
In 2016. The Resident Evil 6, I guess, blew the budget on massive spectacle and multiple playable cooperative campaigns.
It's like they put no money in it.
It seems like it kind of cost Capcom huge numbers. The game wasn't nearly the success as the company wanted, so we entered this kind of long, dark age of Resident Evil.
Yeah, but you see, the problem with Resident Evil 6 is they tried to be too ambitious and too many things. You kind of had, I'm not going to digress too much, but you had Leon, which was like the cinematic adventure. You kind of had Jake, which was a little bit of everything, you know, mixture of stealth, action, problem solving. And then you had Chris, which was the more action campaign. And then you had Ada, which was more puzzle, stealth, really annoying crap. And you could have just picked a couple characters and refined the experience, maybe cut out some of the QuickTime events, and I think people would have loved Resident Evil 6 a lot more, to be honest. So yeah, not digressing too much, but yeah, you're right, it wasn't well received Resident Evil 6, and so I guess because of that, they had a shoestring budget to put towards Umbrella, and you're about to see what a disaster it is.
Resident Evil 7 brought these games back in a big way. The series was kind of on ice, man. It felt dead, and Umbrella Corps made us all wonder, maybe Capcom wanted to kill it. This is a multiplayer spin-off of Resident Evil where you play as a team of mercenaries trying to extract materials from a zombie-infected arena. 2016 is definitely the age of these forgettable, worthless, multiplayer exclusive shooters. And the developers of Borderlands produced their own boring shooter called Battleborn in 2016.
I don't
I
even
mean,
remember
everybody
that.
wanted in on the multiplayer market, but there's a big issue that still eludes online game publishers today. Your game has to be fun. And unfortunately, Umbrella Corps was not. It was kind of embarrassing. I'll admit, I played it, I think I made a video on it, and I didn't completely hate it as much as...
You know, I think the video, like the graphics and the gameplay and all this, look much better in this video, I have to admit, than it is in execution and actually playing the thing. So this footage is not really doing it justice for just how bad this game actually is, but it's a stinker.
Most people did. I like just playing as an Umbrella Soldier blasting dudes, but even that aside, it was a rough time for Resident Evil. Next, at 2017, oh boy, Mass Effect Andromeda. This one was a boondoggle, a failed chance to reset a beloved game series after the divisive ending in Mass Effect 3. Now,
Yeah, didn't they say that Mass Effect 3 has one of the worst endings in video game history? I did watch a video of that once upon a time, and Mass Effect always comes up in that compilation, generally speaking, because I have seen multiple videos on bad endings, I think by Mojo or whatever. But yeah, okay, moving on.
We were all rooting for Andromeda to succeed, but it failed spectacularly. The new open world gameplay was pretty boring. The story
Was
fails
bland.
to hook the player, even after hours of exposition. You know, the characters just don't hit as hard. The alien worlds of the Andromeda galaxy feel really pedestrian.
You know, Mass Effect 9, if you at least play the PC version, okay, fair enough, you play it on console, it doesn't look quite as good. But if you play the PC version and you upscale it, it still looks like a phenomenal game. When did the original Mass Effect come out? Like 2008, 2009. You look at this in comparison, and it doesn't really look like an evolution at all. It just kind of looks like it's stuck in the past, to be honest.
And everything here just kind of felt stale.
Yeah, exactly. Just nothing incredibly, just nothing interesting. I'm just not wowed by this at all. You know, a special mention, when they were talking about team-based games before, I'm surprised they didn't mention Evolve. Evolve was like one of the worst 2K games in the time period that I remember. And it's not even that the gameplay wasn't fun, it's just that 4-on-1 Monster Hunter style game just didn't have any longevity or replayability long-term for people. And that was a complete disaster. I'm surprised I don't hear Evolve mentioned more.
It wasn't the worst game ever made or anything. I think some people ended up liking it, but just everything here felt really stale, and a lot of people were disappointed. Look, compared to most of the games on this list, this game is pretty playable. But when we imagine what this game could have been versus what we got, that's why it goes on the list.
Yeah, I wonder what happened. It just feels like it's missing that little splash of love, you know? It's like when you get your sister to make a pizza instead of Nonna, you know? The analogy, fan.
Next, 2018. How did a major video game publisher like Square Enix release a game like this? The Quiet Man? We'll be asking the same question in a few years. For now, we have to make sense out of one of the most baffling game releases in the
from
last
Square?
decade. The Quiet Man is a cinematic beat-em-up with FMV cutscenes, telling the story with the audio muted to mirror the deaf Quiet Man main protagonist.
I don't know what this is. I'm fascinated. At least at the moment. It seems pretty ambitious, kind of mixing like the FMV in real time and but the problem I've noticed is the FMV actually looked really good, and then it merges into this like in-game graphics where you're actually doing the beat 'em up elements, and I'm like, oh man, like even for the time period, this kind of looks like PS3 level. It doesn't look cutting edge at all. Where's the... I see why they call it Quiet Man. No music, no vocals. What the hell's
It's an
going on
interesting
here?
gimmick, just kind of executed in the worst way possible. The story, the way it was told, was kind of disjointed, and to understand the story, you have to play the game
I'm kinda
twice.
like-
An interesting experiment, but we did not want to play the game twice because it was not fun. It was awful. It was basically playable, so it's better than a lot of the junk out there, but the story, everything here was a drag.
Feels
It's
like
such a
a missed
strange release
opportunity.
from a big studio. We almost wish there were more games like The Quiet Man out in the world, just because it's so confounding. It's terrible, but at least it isn't boring.
At least we got a game now like C2. And then they also had the bouncer way back in the day as well. That was a bit of a grind, but fun in parts too. That's a shame. Not, yeah. Bungled the execution.
Next,
Some parts of it
the
look
year
nice.
2019. Something was just going on at Square Enix around this time. This is the mega publisher behind Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. They made some bad investments, and Left Alive is the type of failure that only a big publisher could really put together. It's a great idea on paper. This is an open world mech shooter where your stranded pilot can move around on foot or hijack giant mechs for these big mega-sized combat scenarios on the ground.
So wasn't that what you did in Titanfall? You just jumped on different mechs and stuff? I mean, geez, it's been like a decade since I've played a Titanfall game. But, I mean, that's kind of the vibes I'm getting just from the explanation anyway.
You're incredibly vulnerable to these patrolling giant mechs, but you're also much stealthier.
So it's a stealth game with mech. Right.
We can imagine an amazing game using this premise. When the first trailers dropped, it seems like it had potential.
Nothing
Left Alive, though,
offensive
is
here
just
yet.
not that game. It's a plotting, poorly put together mess of a game. It's an example of how misguided this game was. Despite being set in a sci-fi future, there's free DLC that covers the game with World of Tanks ads. Yes, this might be the weirdest DLC we've ever seen in an already bad game. Square Enix published two of the weirdest, worst games 2 years in a row. Congrats to them, and that's not even the last time they're going to pop up on this list.
You know what? Square is doing really good things still, I think, with Final Fantasy franchise. I know that's a franchise that splits people, because some people like, you know, obviously the old turn-based ATB system. But I think the Final Fantasy 7 games have been good. I think 16 was pretty good as well. And so I feel like Square on those games still doing a really good job, but it seems like wherever they're trying something else, Chocobo Racing or whatever else they do, it's just kind of the pit. So I really hope they come back, because traditionally speaking, I love Square, but they're kind of missing the mark at the moment.
This is what I was born to do.
Full status check. Legs are badly damaged and unable to function.
What about the weapons? Tell me I can use those at least.
Shoulder weapons returning an error. Only the right-hand weapon is functional.
Fast forward to 2020, Warcraft 3 Reforged. This is another one that we don't see from...
Okay. Because, yeah, I was talking about that earlier in the video, remember? I was like, yeah, Warcraft 3 was a really good game. And I was like, wasn't there some controversy with Warcraft 3 later on? And I couldn't remember what it is. So it's funny that I brought that up. Here we go.
Publishers usually like this much of a misstep. Usually they value their video game releases and reputation, especially their storied classic games. But unfortunately, Warcraft 3 Reforged really destroyed the legacy of a fan favorite RTS, kind of just digging up the corpse to bury it all over again. The developers at Activision Blizzard are normally known for their polished products like this, especially from Blizzard, who have really kept up their sterling spotless record. There's a developer that would rather cancel a game than tarnish their brand, usually, but things started to change here. Reforged is a remake that makes the original game uglier, that changes missions haphazardly and like erases the original. When the RTS remake first released, it completely replaced the original version of the game, which pissed people off even more. You were stuck.
Yeah, that'd
with
be
this
annoying. You should at least give people the option of playing the old version. But it kind of seems like the purpose of this game was just a way to give Warcraft 3 to make it playable on modern systems, I guess. Because that seems like the only purpose that this had. You know, people loved Warcraft 3. Okay, let's put it on a modern system. But they just didn't go to the same love and care of what they did with the original, it seems.
Remake, where some of the missions are completely redone while others are barely changed at all. It's a strange thing to see a half-finished game, one that must have had a bigger scope and budget before they ruthlessly cut back. Either way, Warcraft 3 Reforged is the worst way to play an incredible legendary
And that's a
game.
shame, because, you know, when they've re-released other, and not by the same company, of course, but when they've re-released other real-time strategy games in the past, like Age of Empires and things like that, they've always done a really good job. So you thought Blizzard would keep up the same standard to keep up with those other remakes, but hey, I guess not.
Game.
Our town is under siege.
Orders ready for
Research complete.
Still got good memories
Here's
from
my
watching their gameplay on this, though. I'm not gonna lie.
2021, can you believe it? Square Enix is back here. Balan Wonderworld is another mid-budget mistake from the huge publisher, but this one makes a lot more sense. You've got Yuji Naka, co-creator of the Sonic the Hedgehog series, designing a colorful platformer where everyone is dancing.
You know what? This kind of looks like a PS2, PS3 generic style platformer. And you know how, like, back even in the PS1 days, you had things like Spyro the Dragon, Crash Bandicoot, and then you'd kind of have like the best of the rest, sort of like a Croc or a Gex or something like that. This kind of looks like a game that was supposed to be sort of like from a bigger company, but was a best of the rest kind of game, if that makes sense. That's the vibes I'm getting here.
Do we even need to say this game is bad? Everyone knows how bad Balan Wonderworld is. It became a meme, you know, from the bizarre cutscenes to the broken gameplay.
But what I wonder what age group they were making this one for, though, at the same time. Is it for young kids? It's so corny. Why am I getting the Kingdom Hearts vibes from the music? It's so Disney. It's so freaking Disney. Hey, I'm not gonna lie, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. It's so corny. I love it. I want to play this
like
one. Can someone give this one to me? I don't know where to find it.
It's also insulting.
Send it to me, I'll
I know
pay
it's
you.
for kids, but still, like, everything functions with a single button press. The different outfits you unlock give you powers that often serve no purpose to the gameplay, and instead of boss fights or interesting enemies, you'll replay a boring QTE sequence that just repeats itself over and over again. It's like the definition of madness, this game.
Not even offended by it, to be honest. I want to play it. I can't lie, guys. I want to play it. The music just makes me happy. The graphics are silly. I want to play it. I can't even lie.
Balan Wonderworld instantly became a joke, like, as soon as it released. And the game is more interesting now because it was Yuji Naka's last game before going to jail for insider trading. What a world we've made for ourselves here. Cut to 2022. Oh man, live service games really ramping up and crashing and burning. And here we have Babylon's Fall, this bizarre live service game that somehow failed before it even began. This is a game where the servers were shutting down while copies of the game were still freely available in stores.
I just think people around this time period already, and especially now, just had so much live service fatigue. But at least if you make live service games free and give people the option to buy cosmetics and things like that, you might have half a chance. But now, even now, some companies are like really obnoxious and they're trying to get people to pay a AAA price for some live service games. Now, one that I remember off the top of my head, I think, is Suicide Squad. And that had like a $99 Australian price tag now, and they can't even freaking give away the thing for $5 on sale now, and it's just there's just too many live service games, and all of them are just trying to copy a fatigue genre because, you know, everyone thinks, oh, well, Fortnite's made a bunch of money, how about we try to do the same thing and make some money as well? And then all of a sudden you've got like hundreds of shitty live service games, and it's just too much. It's too much.
It was developed by Platinum Games is another example of big publishers forcing good creators to make games that they don't want to make or they're not familiar with. Platinum is usually an amazing action game developer, but I guess they're not exactly experts at online multiplayer RPGs with drip-fed content. This isn't the only live service disaster from Square Enix. You know, Marvel's Avengers kind of fell flat, but Babylon's Fall is a real big example of a live service game dragging a good developer down. And sadly, we'll probably be seeing a lot more of that in the years ahead. In the year 2023...
You know, by the way, when it comes to Marvel Avengers, that was also Square, wasn't it? Geez, they're on a run of form. I thought the gameplay on that game was actually really, really good. I actually liked all the characters and how they played in Marvel Avengers, not to digress too much. I just didn't think the game world and the characters and all that were all that interesting. But I actually thought the gameplay was okay, personally.
We had the day before, but this isn't a video game. It's a scam marketed as a video game.
Right.
The 2020s are going to be defined by a lot of this type of stuff. Not even Steam is free of shovelware games and crypto NFT garbage dressed up to look like the next real video game release. With
I
a
think
big
I
budget.
heard
And the
about this game. This was supposed to be like... Wasn't this supposed to be sort of like a DayZ kind of like survival horror, zombies, post-apocalyptic type of game? And then I think I remember it released and it just got bombarded with negative reviews. And because the game was such a dumpster fire, didn't it get delisted within a couple days and then people couldn't buy the game anymore and then it completely died? I think this was the game. I hope I'm not wrong, otherwise I've just made a fool of myself.
day before claimed to be a lot of
I had
things.
it
An
wish
MMO,
listed.
an extraction shooter, a combination of The Division and the storytelling and vibes of The Last of Us. Technically, the trailers were so cool for people, it became the most wish-listed game on Steam ever.
Yeah, I had it wish listed.
Whether the game was actually a scam or a case of severe mismanagement, we'll never fully know, but the developers closed soon after the disastrous final launch. The game was accused of asset flipping, lying to news outlets, all kinds of stuff, allegedly. These many red flags got this far, it's crazy. We're guessing it won't be the last time the Steam marketplace has to deal with developers and publishers trying to game the system like
It's
this.
freaking crazy that people think that they can get away with lying to the internet, especially with all these really clever, like, journalists, not legacy media. We're talking about commentary journalists on YouTube that go to their research and pull up the dirt on any fraudulent scam that's on the internet. It's incredible that people bring out these below par games and think they can get away with it these days. It's crazy.
The day before was actually delisted 4 days after release and then never returned to Steam. Hopefully, lessons were learned to
I'm
prevent
so
something
glad
like
I
this
didn't
from happening
buy it,
again, but we'll see. Now it's
How
2024.
bad is
and
the gameplay?
The ruinous nature of live service continues with Warner Brothers games and Suicide Squad.
Yeah. Oh my god, I totally just mentioned this as an example a few minutes ago. Yeah, they can't even get rid of this game for $5 on sale anymore. Some people have tried to argue that this game is not too bad, and I've had a lot of other people say it's just too dark and not fun, and it feels like it's trying to be offensive for the sake of being offensive. I've heard so many different comments about this, but one thing I've not heard about this game is anyone playing it and actually having a good time.
The Justice League. This is a game that just feels like it was confused from the get-go. It started as a melee-focused game before switching gears and using only ranged weapons. There was clearly a vehicle system implemented at one point, but that's all kind of scrapped. The story is weird and like oddly mean-spirited, featuring both the callous death of Batman and one of Kevin Conroy's final performances as the character, and a heartfelt in-game tribute to the same character that they kind of like wasted. Look, you can't have both with this.
But you always gotta end on your best joke.
Bye, Batman.
Instead of an ending, the game promises a series of alternate realities where you'll fight Brainiac over and over again for live service reasons. But the story was actually quickly wrapped up much earlier than intended, and all future DLC was cancelled.
To be honest, I was already sick of fighting Brainiac after playing Injustice 2. Injustice 2 was a very good fighting game from NetherRealm Studios, right? But I've already had enough of Brainiac just from that game alone, I'm just saying. Not that it really has anything to do with a completely different game, but yes, too much of Brainiac is never a good thing.
Live service elements add confusion to an already extremely confused game where monetization always trumped fun. It's a modern problem for video game companies where simply selling a game isn't enough. They need to sell you the game over and over again. And with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, unfortunately all the Arkham goodwill, the Arkham universe, the Arkham vibes were squandered. Absolute wasted potential. There were some fun movement systems here, some cool art direction, but ultimately it led to a really bad game that people kind of rebelled against.
Graphically it looks okay, but yeah, I mean, I think I'll take everyone's word for it's not a fun game, otherwise there'd still be thousands playing it, right? Glad I didn't purchase it, even for $5.
And now, in the current
All
day,
right.
2025, this year isn't over yet, but we can safely bet that Mind's Eye is both the worst and most interestingly bad game of 2025. This game feels like a GTA ripoff, but also like a platform building type thing. Like it's a platform like Roblox.
I had a few people tell me about this game and how they are excited for it and how they were going to binge play it and how it's supposed to be the next big competitor to GTA. And I was like, yeah, and I think I wishlist this on my PlayStation. And then I heard all the reviews, and all the reviews says that this game was pretty much hot garbage. I think I saw scores of this being like 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10. I think the highest score I saw personally was a 5. But it just goes to show how a really good marketing campaign and stuff can overhype a game. Because I had so many people tell me that this game was awesome, exciting, and you know who else told me that a game was going to be awesome and exciting? I had other people tell me that Anthem was also going to be awesome, exciting, and you know how that went a few years ago as well. But anyway, yeah, it's such a shame because it seems like a good idea, this one.
Elements or good tool sets, or really anybody wanting to make anything. It's also an open world game with none of the open world, none of the witty writing, and just a lot of really boring gunplay. Like the best, worst games on this list, you're given pointless time limits to drive around town, and the game was hyped up as something it was absolutely not.
Yeah,
Mind's Eye
right,
is like
exactly.
the biggest, weirdest, dumbest game of 2025.
Yeah, it just looks lazy, generic. Nothing highly offensive, but just nothing fantastic. Certainly no GTA, man. Feels a little, these worlds feel a little bit lifeless. They don't really feel alive or vibrant, do they? It's just not that interesting. I mean,
This
what do you
game was
expect?
supposed to be
AAA
a kind of
companies have a
proof of
AAA
concept demo
budget.
for the everywhere game building engine. Mind's Eye has a game creation tool built in that's anything but impressive. You can make some boring shooter levels or driving sequences with this tool and share them to other players. Apparently, the user-generated content can also be shared across other everywhere engine applications, but all the user content we found is universally terrible. This obviously exists because of the success of like creator tools in Roblox or Fortnite. At least people wanted to play those things. At least people like those tools. Everything in everywhere is just like a terrible GTA user.
Yeah, look, you know, a lot of games on Steam have Steam Workshop. And I would just suggest that before implementing a Steam Workshop, just wait and see if people really like your game and they want more, and then you can implement those kind of things. Like you look at games like Skyrim, for example, there's a multitude of mods you can use for that. It's like one of the GOAT games, right? But, I mean, yeah, if you waste your resources on mods and things like that when people aren't even playing your game, it just seems bewildering to me.
And it all just feels like a company trying to overvalue itself and try and go for those GTA bucks and using name recognition of the developers.
Almost
and what
feels
came
like
out
it's
was a
trying to
rushed,
fake it till it makes it,
incompetent game.
almost.
This game actually drove me insane. I remember doing the before you buy for it.
Yeah, I'm
and
glad
I feel
I
like
never
went
played
crazy.
it. I do like the trailer parts, but
That ain't popcorn.
gunplay only looks generic. It's not that interesting.
Okay, focus on getting out of there alive.
That would be the idea.
Anyway, that's the evolution of
Yeah,
the
that
worst
was a pretty shitty list. So once again, this was the evolution of worst games 1990 to 2025. You know what? I agreed with most of the list, but there were a couple surprises on there, a couple that might have been a little bit harsh. But Gameranx, thank you for an awesome video. As I said, please make sure you give him a sub. These lists take a long time to make. Give us a sub as well. Let us know what you thought of the list. And we'll see you on the next video, guys. Take care, everybody.